Joining me now is the Nationals leader, David Littleproud. David, great to see you. Welcome back to Canberra for the first sitting week here. In a long time, it feels like. I just want to first ask you about this algal bloom on the Florio Peninsula. It hasn't been declared a natural disaster, and we just heard there from many businesses about that, how that's affecting them. What needs to happen here?
Yeah, well, the government's been flat-footed on this. If you cast your mind back to the Fishkill and the Menindee Lakes, we actually had a $75 million package within a matter of weeks. This government sat on this, watched it, and watched livelihoods be torn up. They've also got a drought in South Australia and Victoria. We've been calling for some time to reinstate the Regional Investment Corporation interest-free, repayment-free loans for 2 years. That could encompass also those fishermen. They are farmers as well. And I think that definition has been lost on many, and that'll also help these drought farmers. It allows them up to $2 million to refinance their existing commercial debt for no interest, no repayment for 2 years, and then go to interest only for 3. Or they can use it just for working capital to get through. It saves their cash flow. But there's also farm household allowance and other measures that should be triggered immediately.
Is this a natural disaster
I think this
in
government,
your view?
Well, I think obviously it's one of significance, definitely, when you look at the impact. And I think if we need to broaden those definitions, and as a parliament we should do that. But the instruments that are available to this government can be triggered now. In fact, farm household allowance doesn't even have to be declared a natural disaster. You can actually trigger that under hardship provisions, and that's actually effectively job starter being given to be able to put bread and butter on the table. They could have that straight away, but I think there's also some big restructural piece, and around that is alleviating some of the cash flow pressure on interest from commercial banks. Taking that away to give them some breathing space is a simple way for the Commonwealth to inject itself, along with other measures that we've seen with other natural disasters.
It's amazing that these farmers, and you're right, these fishermen as well are declared as farmers as well. That is a proper definition, and we can often forget that. They are often at the forefront of climate change, and they are the most nimble when it comes to lowering their emissions, doing the right thing by the environment, and then they're copping it. Today as well, we have Barnaby Joyce say, once again, and we know his feelings on this, he thinks the Nationals should drop net zero. Are you any danger of you doing that?
Well, we've undertaken a review, obviously, from we signed up to this in 2021 under the Morrison-Joyce government. After the election, I made it very clear that we will start an internal process, which has been started, and Senator Ross Cadell and Senator Matt Canavan will lead that, an internal party process, and that work has commenced, and we'll get to an informed position, much like we did with The Voice. But what we are experiencing, particularly in regional areas, that I don't think people in metropolitan areas understand, is the real burden of our landscape being ripped up, our livelihoods being ripped up for this all renewables approach. We are tearing communities apart. And unfortunately, when you see many parts of the rest of the world now saying that we're not going to get to net zero, we need to actually make sure that we're sensible about this. Rather than trying to achieve the impossible, we need to be sensible and achieve the sensible about trying to reduce emissions in a sensible way, but not at any cost, and not at the cost of regional rural Australians. And I think that's one thing that the Nationals will look at. We're going to do that methodically. And that party room process has begun. There's backbenchers are allowed to have their own bills, and we encourage that. But as a party room, we've made a position to review our position from the Morrison-Joyce position in 2021, and we'll come to that clearly as a room, and we'll do that in the coming months.
Can I just ask you, and you're tapped in, of course, with your own community, but the Nationals' view more broadly. Is it right to make the separation between a lot of farmers are frustrated about the transmission lines that will run through their farmland, through agricultural farmland, and frustrated that they're kind of at the forefront, but they don't necessarily want to drop net zero. They believe in climate change. They want to see something done. How do you make that distinction there among your voter base?
Yeah, and I think this is about understanding, trying to achieve the impossible rather than doing what's sensible. And you can still do that. That's why the Nationals took a very strong position about a technology agnostic approach. after the election that we were not prepared to see nuclear energy taken away from our policy position, because we do need baseload power. You cannot run an economy of the scale, the size of Australia on an all renewables approach. But if you do, what you're trying to do is not only send your bills up, which you're experiencing, what you're seeing in my own electorate, I've got 3 big wind farm proposals put in front of me that is tearing the community apart. And that's right across our country. And I just say to city people, we're not saying we don't believe in climate change. We're just saying you're asking us to bear all the burden. And there is a consequence. There is a consequence for your food security, but it's also a consequence for your electricity bill that you're experiencing at the moment. So we should be sensible. And what we're going to do is do the work to be able to articulate that there is a way for Australia to look at this as a sensible way and not get left behind in a competitive sense globally. I mean, we saw only a couple of weeks ago, the EU is now looking to actually have their big heavy industries like cement and steel exempt from carbon reduction. So the world is starting to realise the low-hanging fruit's been done. We've got to be sensible about how we try and achieve that, but we should have the tools to achieve it, not put it all on regional Australia to bear that burden. And when you even see people like Zali Steggall rail against just 6 wind turbines on North Head, yet she's prepared to see our landscape littered with hundreds of them. The irony and the hypocrisy is just not understanding what people in regional Australia are being asked to bear the burden of. We all want to be part of a solution, but we also want to be able to produce your food and fibre at a price that you can afford. And you've got to be able to turn the lights on. Just look at Portugal and Spain.
Just one final question here. I know this week and over the next couple of weeks there'll be a focus on the economy, on productivity. There's that roundtable. You have shown yourself to be quite productive and wanting to get around those tables in the past. I'm sure you will do it again. I wanted to just ask you about Tasmania at the weekend though, because there are a lot of issues there. The Nats decided to get involved in the Tassie election. You must be pretty disappointed with the outcome there, because you jumped on this kind of anti-stadium bandwagon. You don't seem to have made many inroads. Did you expect to do better?
No. I mean, the Nationals haven't run in Tasmania, I think, for decades. The reality is no one knows our brand. And if you go to Tasmania, let's not kid ourselves on the East Coast. We're not as important to them as we think we are, and they are very insular in terms of their political concerns. And it's very local.
Self-awareness from a politician. Who would have thought?
So, look, I think this was about, obviously, we had people that wanted to have an alternative because of the fluid nature of Tasmanian politics, and it was the first outing, and to even get 2%, I think, was in a political system I don't think anyone really understands under the Hare Clark. But we were realistic. It was about making sure. Yeah, we're just trying to take small steps. We held on to all our seats in the last federal election because we stood for what we believed in, and we proved that after the election, and were prepared to stand up within the coalition and stay without it until some of those issues that were so important to the people we represent were actually maintained. And if they weren't, then we had the courage of our conviction. And that takes time, but obviously now we just hope that there's some stability in Tasmania, and we hope that the Premier, Rockcliffe, can form a government and get on with the job. And I think people down there had a fair bit of visceral anger about the fact they were sent back to the polls 15 months after they were just taken, and then had a federal election. So hopefully there's a lesson there for Tasmanians, that they just want outcomes, they don't want politics. Yeah,
I thought it was a weird issue for the Nats to stick a shingle out on though. Rockcliffe has been very pro-stadium. The Nationals went down there wanting a bit of product differentiation. Seemed like, a weird ideological stance to take. You're not for a piece of critical infrastructure?
Well, it's not one I took. It's one of the local Tasmanians. I don't, as a Queenslander, go down and give gratuitous advice. It's one that the local Tasmanians. It's a bit like coming to Queensland and telling us where we should build our Olympic stadium. So we'd tell you to take a running jump. So it was one that the local division made, and we respect their processes. I think everyone wants a team, and I think a stadium of some stature would be required. But in same token, I think the AFL's cut a pretty good deal here when they're making plenty of money and not prepared to cut cut a cheque. I think that there was some concerns down there from what I understood from being on the ground. But the Tasmanian people get to choose that, not politicians from Canberra or from Queensland. That was a decision made locally.
All right, David, thanks so much. Enjoy the week. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me.